What's going on, guys? We are back on the PO-Mod today. So we had to take a little break for work. Went and worked for the weekend, came back, and we got a bunch of boxes in. Some of the boxes I'm really excited about came from our friends at Willwood. Bam, right there. Shout out to the guys at Willwood. I reached out to them. I wanted to get a brake kit, front, rear. I wanted to have everything nice, matching, everything new. So we talked with them and they put us together a couple kits that are gonna work for our needs specifically. Now, as we go through installing the brakes and hooking them all up and all that kind of stuff, I'll tell you guys what we did a little bit differently about our setup than what they might do in a typical setup. But for now, we have got the brakes. I went and got a spring compressor. So it's time to get to work on getting this front end back together. I also grabbed the other wheels and tires so that way they were a little bit lighter. I want to get the front end together, hopefully, get the front end together, get the doors off, maybe just sit the fiberglass doors on, maybe make up some weight in the rear, kind of figure that out because I want to scale this thing one more time. I've been looking at this setup, and one of the things about this setup that could possibly happen is if we kept this setup here, it would allow us to maybe potentially run a radiator up front. Now, I don't know that I want to run a radiator up front, but it would be the easiest thing to do. The other thing is this thing here with the couplers. Obviously, we want to make this as much out of solid pipe as we can. The couplers are just kind of to hold it there in place and give us an idea. But we won't know until I get a bunch of that front end stuff on and we start getting it weighed. The big thing is that I want to get this information every step of the way so that way we can make an informed decision about where we're putting things and how we're putting them. Worst case scenario, if we do all that and I don't like the way that it is, we can cut this off and I can go ahead and move the turbo closer to the engine. We can have it set up that way, which would allow us to kind of move some weight around. But we're not going to know until we get some of these parts on and get it figured out. So let's go ahead and get started with the brakes. All right, so something that I don't typically do, we've got instructions. We've got actually 7, 8, 9 pages of instructions. There's quite a lot. So we're going to take a look at the instructions. We can use the factory spindle with this, but as you guys can see, there's a couple things we're going to have to do. We've got to cut away this part of the spindle, and we've got to drill these holes out. Now, I don't have the tap that I need, so I'm going to have to go run and get the tap, but I can at least work on getting these holes drilled out because I do have a drill bit for that, and getting the rest of the spindles cut away. So let's go ahead and get started with that and work our way from there. Alright, so this brake caliper adapter is going to be going here. As you guys can see, this part here is hitting, and I think that I might have to do a little grinding to kind of make that sit flush back there. I know we got to cut the ears off, so yeah, something like that. So we got a little wiggle wobble right here. Flush with that, kind of cut flush with that. I did a pretty good job if I say so myself. Man, oh man, that right there would be nice. I'm not gonna lie, I was really worried about that part and screwing it up, but it really wasn't that bad at all. Now I just gotta do the other side, then we can start tapping them and assembling the rest of the brakes. Alright, so looking at these instructions, it looks like the caliper bolt is going to want to come in through the back, right, and bolt to this bracket, which means we need just a little bit here. I could probably just do this with a flat disc, but here, this piece is going to have to come clear out of the way. So we're going to have to trim. Tapping, baby. Tap. Alright, now we're about to do something incredibly dangerous and stupid. See, we've got our brakes assembled. We have to compress a giant spring. So we've got those trick springs that are getting ready to go on here. I think first things first, we can cut one coil off, which ain't gonna help us much with how long these springs are, but it'll help us a little bit. So let's cut that coil off and get this mounted. Now Moroso says you're only supposed to cut a quarter coil at a time till you get the ride height right. This ain't our first rodeo. Cut a full coil. Live life. Like that? What are you so scared of? If it pops, it's gonna pop this way. It ain't coming to you. Now I wouldn't stay in there.
Jesus.
David Bowie once said, under pressure, I'll take shit that ain't gonna work for 1,000, Bob. Clear?
Jesus.
Here, I'll come stand on it. Oh man, it's so bad. Oh, don't put your fingers in between there. That's when you lose digits. I don't know. I think from there, we'd probably get the jack up under it. So I think what I did last time, no BS, was I just kind of got it in place and beat it, and then just beat it till it popped in. Well, let's see if this even fits. Because we have an extended upper ball joint, so that should help us a little bit. All right. So that's that. Yeah, it's one to lift the car up.
There she goes.
There we go. Now we got some tension on her. What is that?
Oh, that's my phone.
That's a cell phone? That's a brick. You could beat somebody upside the head with this thing. Wow. Oh, well, I happened to be looking. I'm like, what is this here?
I didn't even know where it was at.
It's a brick. Yeah, so we got springs. Now, right now they look like this, but we figured out that when you put weight on them, they kind of suck in and go in together nice. So from here, I think it's time. Maybe I go ahead and start figuring out brake location and all that, but then I can throw the other wheels on and we can get this thing back on the scales again to get a better idea of how this is all coming down. I know we saved some weight in these control arms, but we didn't have brakes, we didn't have springs, so we gained some weight too and everything. I think it's time to go ahead and throw those on right quick. Ew. Slap through. Alright, so I managed to finish up the front brake system. Obviously no fluid lines or anything, we still got to build lines and do all that, but it took a little bit of time. Just with these kind of Willwood kits, it comes with shims and you got to shim it correctly to make sure that it's directly even. Everything's Loctited, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we're all good to go. Now we're going to do something fun. I'm going to throw the front wheels. I got the front wheels off the Nova. We're going to throw some front wheels on here, and then we're going to set this thing back down on scales because most of the front is complete. There isn't a lot, a lot more that's going to go on the front. There's a metric crap ton of stuff that's going to go on the back, but I did bring some weights too, so we can kind of simulate some fuel cell back there, battery, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to yank the doors off because I know those doors are heavy. So we're going to yank the doors off. We might even sit the front end down just over top of this. We're gonna get a lot closer to what our final weights could be. Now keep in mind, we're still gonna save 100 pounds right here when we go to the aluminum 332 instead of the iron block. But from here, we're gonna make a decision on, do I finish welding all this up? Am I happy with the way that it's worked out and the way that it's laying out? Or do we need to go with a different plan? So let's get some wheels on here we'll get this thing set down. I'm also going to, right now there's no shocks in the rear, it's just a rod holding the rear height in place. I'm actually going to drop that down a little bit, and we're going to get our first view of what the ride height of these springs even is, and how it all looks coming together, and how the weight works out. We're all doing this for weight, and I know it might seem like, you know, man, you keep throwing it on the scales, why are you wasting the time? It's not a waste of time. This is important to me and important in the way that we're building this car, that it ends up where I want it from the start. Because if not, it's just more weight we got to add to the rear. I mean, there's an easy fix for it, but if we can avoid some of that stuff now, we'll be good to go. Plus, this should also show us, we'll be able to get our full range of travel. Now that we got the springs in, control arms in, everything. We'll be able to see how much front end travel we've got right now too, and then kind of make a game plan for some of that stuff. Tell you what, 2101 without me in it, be 54 on the front. We're not looking too hot right now, 2,100 pounds. But there's one thing that I do know, we're gonna save 100 there. These springs up front are high. But it's in terms of 4 corner weights, right now, 4 corner weights, I mean, these things are like perfectly across the board. There's some parts in the car. Let's go ahead and take those out, and let's go ahead and yank these heavy ass doors off. Gosh, that's with the crash bar out of it. Heavy, yeah. How much did the weight drop?
It's at 1991 now, just with the one door off.
2064 to 1991 with one door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stick that heavy thing off to the side. Let me do the other side now. So that was 70 pounds.
On the light one.
On the light one. Oh my God. I don't know if it was heavier, but that thing was heavy.
1906.
1906. So we went from 2064 to 1906. It's over 150 pounds.
Just in the doors.
Now, I'm not saying that the fiberglass doors weigh nothing. They might weigh. I think when I did those on the white car, I think complete everything, they weighed 17 pounds a piece, something like that. Problem is, it only made our front percentage worse.
Right.
Have fun with these. 1936, that's what I'm talking about. Alright, we've got a couple more things we can do. I've got the brakes sitting back there, the center section sitting back there. I know we're going to put a fuel cell and a battery and stuff, so rough math, I think I looked up the 85 weighs 6 point something pounds per gallon. We're going to have a 10-gallon fuel cell. I only got 50 pounds of weight, but we'll throw that in the back there and take a look at what that looks like. Then I'll get in it. 50 more pounds in the trunk. 1981. Sit my happy self down in here. Well, we're not quite there. 2156. It's 52.9. So 53% on the front.
Man, this thing would make a great radio car.
This thing would make it. You want to go radio racing instead? We ain't got that kind of But overall, 2155, that leaves us with 350 pounds.
You still got to take 100 off the front.
Oh, we still have to take 100 off the front. All right, so now we got to do math, like real math. Let me take a picture of this. We got to do real math because it's not going to take all the weight off the front. It's not going to take 100 pounds off, but it'll probably at least take 75 pounds off the front. So let's math that out and see where we're at. All right, so we've got a couple problems. One, those front springs might not work. I ordered the lightest trick spring for a 78 Camaro, the absolute lightest they had, and as you can see, it's maxing that front end out. You can't, it's sitting on the bump stops. Now, there's some settling time and all that, but I just don't think we got enough weight up front. And looking at these numbers, right now with me in the car, it was 1140 in the front and 1015 in the rear. Now we've still definitely got a few 100 pounds to go here and there, but for the aluminum block, we know the aluminum block is 100 pounds lighter, but it's not all directly on the front tires, right? So for estimation purposes, I took 75 pounds. 1065 plus 1015 is 2080. 1065 divided by 2080 gives us 51.2% on the front. So we're not quite there because my goal really wanted to be 52% on the rear, not 51% on the front. We can leave the turbo kit there. We can cheat it back some and try to, I don't know how much cheating it back is going to alleviate that, but at this point we're going to have to do a rear mount radiator. We're going to have to shove absolutely everything we can in the trunk or as close to the back end of the car. You know, there's definitely going to be some more weight in the rear because like I said, that 50 pounds just accounts for fuel and not even a full tank, not even a full 10 gallons, plus we've got pumps, plus we've got, I'd say we've probably got another solid, well, if we put the radiator in the rear, we got another solid 200 pounds that can go in the rear. So if we put 200 pounds in the rear, so we make 1065, 1215, right? So let's do math here. Is going to be 53% on the rear. So the answer for all those that was hating and juking and jiving and shit in the comments about, oh, you know, blah, the front weight, we can put that turbo directly front and center if we put all the rest of the weight in the trunk. Plus, I mean, there's a steering wheel, there's stuff that's going to be spread out throughout the car, but I don't think we're that far off from making that thing 52% or more on the rear just to start. Other problem, that spring. So right now that spring has got the front end sitting up and it's pushing weight onto the rear, which is great, but we're going to have absolutely no travel. We're already on the limiter, so we're already on the bump stop. So we got some stuff to figure out here. Dun dun dun. Add crazy math sequence. Add me selling hot dogs on the starting line, raising 50 cents at a time. It's a money problem. We got to spend more money. The money's going to fix it because we're going to need different parts, different kind of setup of parts. I love the way that the back end, though, like now that we dropped it down a couple holes, the back end looks great. It's time to do some thinking. Can we get me in a robe, fireplace, pipe, glass of whiskey? Alright, so we've gone over a bunch of the possible outcomes and ideas of what's happening here. I wanted to use the coil spring because that would allow me to put the turbo front and center right in here. My theory was that the added stored energy in the coil spring that you're going to get more out of than a coilover setup would help us get this turbo up and kind of over that hump and ultimately help put weight on the rear tires. Other thing is that with this setup, we could still have potentially run some sort of a front mount radiator. We were going to check on that with the weight and kind of see how we wanted to approach that and go from there. But the problem we're having now is that these coil springs are not going to work. And I know a bunch of people in the comments are going to be like, well, just cut them until they're right. Well, the more that we cut off of them, the more we lose that stored energy, the more we're kind of counteracting everything that I was trying to do here. So sometimes, unfortunately, you have to learn a lesson by doing it. Now, those springs are like $200. This is not the most expensive lesson I've ever learned, but I think what we're going to have to do is now go from the coil spring setup to a front mount coilover. And with that, possibly some sort of a long travel system, etc., etc., etc. The issue with that is that if I'm going to do that, I feel much more comfortable taking the turbo, turning it sideways, sticking it right up here so we could go straight out the side with an exhaust and go straight up and in to the intake. It's going to make for less piping, which will save a little bit of weight. I mean, we're talking a couple pounds here. That's not going to be the end of the world. But I think that's what we're going to end up having to do. And if that's what we have to do, I kind of have to redesign a bunch of this front end stuff here. Because if I go ahead and cut the center of this pocket out for a coilover to fit through, right, I'm going to have to cut this out. Well, this is where the control arm mounts. I'm going to have to add some added gussets. I'm going to have to beef that area up because cutting this center out is going to reduce the strength of it, and over time it's going to end up going like this. So we're going to have to figure something out to beef this up a little bit and make it so that the coilover fits in there, number one, which honestly, once I cut this out, I could probably do another, triangular piece here and kind of weld it in. Maybe even box that off a little bit. I'm not sure. We'll have to take a look. But all this is going to have to come apart. I may end up having to cut these control arms or order a different set. I may have to cut the bottom or order a different set. We're going to be a little bit behind here. This is not looking good for my September goal of wanting to be at LS Fest. But what's more important than being at LS Fest, I don't want to just throw this thing together the way it is just to get to LS Fest. We're at a point now where I've listed the Nova for sale. We're going all in on this thing, and if we're going to go all in on this thing, we need to get it right from the start. With that being said, I think we're going to have to redesign the turbo kit. I'm going to have to take all this apart again, and we're going to have to start cutting it out. There's going to be a lot more work to come. The problem is I don't have the exact answer on what parts are going to be replacing it yet. I know that there's some different folks out there that have different solutions. We have to find what's going to work for us and work in this scenario and work the way that I want it to. Now, I've got some great friends all over. I've got some great companies. Huge shout out to Nick Pluniak, who just spent a bunch of time on the phone explaining coilovers and springs, and there's a lot of math involved. That's going to help and make our decision of what kind of a package we're going to go with spring rate and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we got to go backwards to go forwards. Kind of sucks. It'll make for a better product at the end, right? With what we've scaled this thing out at, what was it, 21 something with me in it? We're still 100 pounds heavy on that motor. So, I think we're going to hit our 2,500 pound or less goal, race ready, fluids, everything. We can be able to make with that new motor 1,400 horsepower, which I'll let you guys go and do the math of what 1,300 horsepower at 2,500 pounds should put down. Should be the fastest we've ever gone by a margin. Now, that's in a perfect world. Everything goes right, the converter's right, gear ratios, all that, everything. I don't know that we're going to be spot on first shot, but this is it. I'm at the point of, like I said, I'm giving it my everything because, to be honest with you guys, I ain't got much left in me. This is going to take every dime I've got, every trick I've got, every pulling a rabbit out of a hat to make this thing happen and to make it work. And I think that sometimes like this, we just got to step back and do what we can to make it the outcome that I want it to be. So what I'm thinking is we'll get this thing back up in the air. I'm going to have to start with getting the spring apart, which was dangerous enough getting together, let alone coming apart. And then we'll be able to get some measurements. I want to mount the coilover to this bar, or we talked about possibly adding another bar in there. I kind of FaceTimed with Nick. We went over some different ways to do it. So it's really going to depend on when I cut this out and see where the coilover can physically be. This is probably going to end up getting cut right about here. And then we're going to take and put the turbo this way, sideways. Hopefully the exhaust ends up coming out right about here. Right? We'll have a big, nice 5-incher. And then I'll make a straight shot. Then I also just discussed with Nick some of my thoughts about this steering rack. And if you guys notice, now this is at full travel. This is only going to get worse if we go to coilovers. If we go to coilovers, we start cutting this stuff, we start doing everything I want to do, it's only going to get worse. So that steering angle is going to be even more exaggerated. So I was thinking about possibly taking that mount, cutting it off at the frame. And this is why I haven't fully welded it in place yet. It's actually still tacked to the frame. because ever since I've been looking at it, I've been thinking it kind of needs to be lower anyway. There's got to be a happy medium between where this thing is going to be at full travel and regular ride height. Honestly, I don't care about regular ride height. This is a race car. What I care about is when it's like this going down the track. But Nick brought up a good point, like places like KD, where the hill and you instantly go back to ride height, it can make for a wild ride. So maybe I was thinking about dropping it 2 to 3 inches. Maybe we'll just drop it an inch and we'll kind of meet in the middle there. Once again, I've got a lot of work ahead of me and a lot of work to redo. I think in the end, in order for me to be happy with this car, it's got to perform the way we want it to. And the only way that that's going to happen is if I take the time now to redo this stuff. So it sucks, but sometimes things don't work out. But the weight though, the weight of this thing, come on. That's gonna be it for now. We're gonna take this thing apart, get it back up in the air. I'll start figuring out what I'm cutting, how I'm doing it all, and that'll all be in the next video. But right now, we could use a little mental break, and I need some time to go find some parts and plot and plan. So I will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, subscribing, being the best damn fans you guys could be. I love it. Even the ones that don't like me, look at me now. We're getting it figured out. We're gonna get it right. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.